In the spirit of India, I ask us to take our hands and just let them express, to bring in whatever it is we're able to do with our hands, and we do so much with our hands. And then as in India, we'll bring them together in Namaste. And the idea here is that this hand and that hand, this person and this person, and that person and that person, we're all together. And it's with great joy I stand temporarily without mask, gazing upon friends, old and new, rejoicing that we're here at all together, and to assemble in a semi-normal context is delightful, I think, for all of us. The Doshis, Navin and Pratima, created many years ago the Doshi Bridgebuilder Award. And as you can see in the program that you received, we've been honored and privileged to lift up and recognize so many remarkable people, men and women, elders and young people, people who have built bridges, who have extended that hand and brought others to the table in a spirit of love. And we're honored to continue that tradition today. And to welcome us, I invite our Dean, Robin Crabtree, to say a few words. Professor of Women and Gender Studies, a specialist in communications, a specialist in administration. So Robin, I ask you to please come forward.
Well, following suit. So, wow, yeah, it is that view of people in the flesh in this space that we used to know so well. So, as Dr. Chappell said, I'm Robin Crabtree. I'm the Dean of the Bellarmine College of Liberal Arts here at LMU. And in this college sits the Yoga Studies program, as well as all the humanities and social sciences. It's always my honor as the Dean to welcome everyone to this signature event each year, celebrating extraordinary individuals and organizations that contribute to the creative and productive interplay of faith and reason, which is a foundational principle in Catholic and Jesuit education. I'd particularly like to welcome to our campus the many members from the surrounding communities who join us here face-to-face and virtually as well for this event every year in particular. And I'm always happy to see faculty and staff and students across the disciplines joining and being together. But of course, I want to welcome Reverend James Lawson back to LMU, long time friend of LMU. And so happy to hear you speak again, and having heard you speak just a couple of years ago, but what feels like ages ago because it was BC. It was BC. Loyola Marymount University, as you know, is a place that encourages, convenes, and facilitates vibrant and frank intellectual and interreligious dialogue on topics of the deepest importance to understanding the full human experience. Through the Doshi Bridgebuilder Award, we're able to honor together each year an individual organization that has demonstrated a unique and sustained dedication to fostering understanding between cultures, peoples, and disciplines. The program lists some of the folks who have gotten this award in the past, and it's a very distinguished list. who animate and extend our university mission in such important ways. I also always notice that this award and what it honors the founders also manifest the values and advance the goals of a liberal arts education in Jesuit and Marymount traditions. Indeed, we're so grateful for the vision and generosity of our friends Naveen and Fatima Doshi and their family, who founded the Doshi Family Bridgebuilder Award at LMU. The Doshis have been key partners to me as dean and to many of our faculty, most notably, I think Dr. Chappell, who carries the Doshi professorship, always helping us to imagine new pathways for fulfilling our mission and always bringing so many wonderful people and communities into the LMU family. And so we're so grateful to you. Others are going to speak to some of these points and also introduce our honoree, but I want to offer my personal congratulations to Reverend Lawson, this year's Doshi Bridgebuilder Award recipient. He's a personal hero of mine, a personal hero of my grandmother, long gone, but also one of my heroes and inspirations. And I've drawn wisdom, courage, and inspiration from his work. Reverend Lawson's lifelong commitments and personal journey inspire us to approach our lives and think about our actions in the world with equal parts passion for justice, rigorous accountability, and profound awe. What could be more Ignatian than that? Congratulations, Reverend Lawson, and welcome again to all.
Thank you, Dean Crabtree. So I'm Dr. Kim Harris. I am Assistant Professor of African American Thought and Practice in Theological Studies. That's a mouthful. Now, I appreciated definitely how Dr. Chappell had us think about India and some of the waves and the body movements. So I would like us now to think about Alabama, Mississippi, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Mississippi. To think about Memphis, think about Tennessee, and to think about music. So please take out your hands if you would. And you know, we're going to sing. Now I know we've been missing getting to sing together, and with masks on, it might sound a little bit different, but get a little bit of a beat going here. One of the songs of Civic Group. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. One of these days. I'm gonna walk the streets of glory. Oh, I'm gonna walk the streets of glory one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna walk the streets of glory. I'm gonna walk the streets of glory one of these days. One of these days. All God's children gonna sit together. All God's children gonna sit together one of these days. Hallelujah. All God's children gonna sit together. All God's children. watching this virtually, I hope that they are also singing in their Zoom room. Because we are singing here. And here's one of those verses, goes like this. I'm going to tell God how you treat me. Oh, I'm going to tell God how you treat me one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm going to tell God how you treat me. I'm going to tell God how you treat me one of these days. One of these days. All right, we're going to take it home now. I'm going to sit at the welcome table. Here we go. I'm going to sit at the welcome table. Oh, I'm going to sit at the welcome table. One of these. I'm going to sit at the welcome table. I'm going to sit at the welcome table one of these days. Sing that last line again. I'm going to sit at the welcome table one of these days. One more time. I'm going to sit at the welcome table one of these days. One of these days. Hallelujah.
When I came to LMU in 1986, I first met Bob Singleton at the Bellarmine College softball game. And as I came to know Bob and Helen, I came to know their story. And inspired by the movement sparked so many years ago, they bring memories of the sacrifice required in order to effect social change. In the summer of 1961, endured imprisonment, standing up for justice. When I arrived, I was reminded by a colleague that LMU likes to celebrate. And we have continued this tradition, and I feel so honored to count Kim Harris as a member of our faculty. And she gets her students singing. As all you will do, you've already done, we will do some more before this afternoon is brought to a close. Nonviolent Pratima grew up at a time when India was convulsing. And I invite Nonviolent Pratima to speak through Pratima a message that will draw this connection between India and freedom and our life in America and freedom.
It'll be hard to follow, Kim, but I'll try, just say a few words. This is written by my husband, Navin Doshi. Good afternoon, Reverend Lawson and friends. Thank you all for gracing this event with your presence. We're fortunate having this event at LMU. Thank you, Chris, Robin, and all those who worked hard to make it possible. We're honored that Reverend James Lawson agreed to accept the Bridgebuilder Award, increasing the value and the significance of the award. Today, October 2nd, is Mahatma Gandhi's birthday, not far from September 22nd, birthday of Reverend Lawson. So happy belated birthday, Dr. Lawson.
Time limitation makes me abbreviate Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy. He was raised in a family with great ethical values of Vedas and Jain traditions. He studied Bhagavad Gita, Buddhism, and the New Testament. He was also influenced by the idealism of Tolstoy, Thoreau, and their philosophy of self-reliance and civil disobedience. He breaded truth, nonviolence, and self-suffering into a movement called Satyagraha. The goal of Satyagraha was to end the injustice by changing the heart of wrongdoers, by awakening their sense of justice at every level of society through love and self-suffering. In fact, the filmmaker, Sir Richard Attenborough, was so inspired by this very dictum of Mahatma Gandhi that he said, "It has always been a mystery to me how man can feel honored and superior by the humiliation of their fellow human beings." After coming across agnostics and people of other beliefs, Mahatma Gandhi incorporated Jain philosophy of Anekanvada, implying that the truth is many-sided and relative, also comparable to the story of the blind man of Hindustan having different views of an elephant. He concluded that the essence of all religions is not dogmatic truth, but ethical actions and unity of all humanity. The approaches may differ. Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy was inclusive of love, compassion, and freedom of choice, experiencing the beauty of limitless space dissolving the boundary between the human body and the nature. God, Brahman, Allah, Christ, Nirvana are different names in different traditions. However, they all reside at the mountaintop, having many unique paths to climb towards the top. He had accepted that there is only one ultimate reality, manifested and expressed differently. One may change the path to go around the obstacle as long as the direction is towards the mountaintop where all paths meet. Reverend Lawson and I were very fortunate to be born, raised, and had experienced the idealism of Mahatma Gandhi and Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. I was only 10 years old when my parents, I, and about 8 more walked with Mahatma Gandhi for about an hour and a half in Panchgini. After the walk, there was the chanting and music of different traditions. Reverend Lawson, about 8 years senior to me, had the opportunity to work with Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. during his younger years. We all remember, "I Have a Dream." We all know that Mahatma was responsible to make India free from the British rule. However, there were other factors that helped to make India free. There was a powerful Christian lobby during the Second World War. Reverend Lawson's father, Reverend James Morris Lawson Sr., was probably the member of the Christian lobby. This lobby was putting the pressure on US Congressman NFDR, advocating for India's freedom. Why? Because they saw Mahatma Gandhi in Christ's image. That resulted into FDR putting the pressure on British to make India free from their rule after the war. Out of many praise of Mahatma Gandhi from so many world leaders before and after his assassination, I will recite few of them. General Omar Bradley, second only to General Eisenhower, Gandhi rejected the atom and grasped the Sermon on the Mount. He was a nuclear infant, but an ethical giant. He knew nothing about killing, but knew much about living and loving. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "If humanity is to survive and progress, Gandhi is inescapable." It is ironic, yet very true, that the greatest Christian of the modern world was a man who never embraced Christianity. Dalai Lama said, "I accept this Nobel Prize as a tribute to the man who founded the tradition of nonviolence, Mahatma Gandhi, who also taught and inspired me." Author Mary King said, "Gandhi was a pioneer in leading 7 different struggles. They are against racism, against colonialism, against the caste system, against economic exploitation, against ethnic supremacy, for equality of women, and for struggle without any violence." Albert Einstein, after Gandhi's assassination, said, "Generations to come will scarcely believe that such a one as this ever in flesh and blood walked upon this earth." In 1981, 53 Nobel laureates issued a partial manifesto calling upon governments and NGOs. One way to combat the Holocaust of hunger is to have weak and powerless organize and employ nonviolent actions, exemplified by Gandhi. A reverberating line spoken by the Mahatma in my mind is, "Good and evil reside in our hearts." The corollary to that statement is, "Good and evil form a pair of opposites, where inseparable evil is the ignorance and the raw material for the good." Today, idealism of both Mahatma Gandhi and Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. have become most relevant for humanity to survive and prosper. Thank you, and may God bless us all.
I'd like to invite Reverend Lawson to come to the stage to receive first the award, and then I'd like his son, Judge John Lawson, to also join him. Mrs. Lawson, Dorothy Lawson, was to be with us today. We have a gift for her, but John will receive it and must then present it to Mrs. Lawson. Okay, so this is our photo opportunity. You can take your mask down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
Oh, no, okay. Right here.
Okay, very good. Now I invite Stephanie and Ayana and Serenity to say a couple of words, and then they will place garland, one for Reverend Lawson and one for Dorothy Lawson that will go onto the shoulders of John.
Hi, so my name is Stephanie Glover, and I'm just going to say a few words because I'm actually not accustomed to being on this side of the camera. So I'm going to keep it short, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity to acknowledge, the contributions you made, to people like me and the generations that came after you. So I thank you again for that contribution, but also thank you for giving me the opportunity to open up my throat chakra a little bit today. But I do really appreciate the foundational work that you've been doing. Foundational work is hard. The layers that cover up those foundations in the core, they're easily accessible and they're easy to kind of unravel, but to get to the root of an issue is hard work. And, I just want to thank you for taking time to put focus in on the root, which is non-harming, non-violence. And I'm thankful to be able to point my son, I have a 20-year-old, point my son to a living example of how to step out into this world and contribute in a way that shows compassion and shows non-harming. Yoga is a lot about integration and yoking. And to me, you've done that by taking these hard and rigid issues that are systemic in nature that we have to deal with in our day-to-day lives. But you integrate that with, again, love and compassion. And then you teach people how to also reciprocate that and share that with other generations. And so I just appreciate that level of contribution, because again, being in the ground, in the roots of trying to fix a thing is a hard thing. Trying to invoke generational change is a hard thing. I'm the oldest sibling. So I find myself doing a lot of foundational level work within my family and within my community. And it's hard. It's hard. It's sometimes thankless. So, I want to take an opportunity to thank you so much for being a representation and somebody that I can, again, point my son to for influence and inspiration. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Ayana. I'm a member of cohort 8 in the Master's in Yoga Studies course. I had the pleasure of speaking to my students just recently about Reverend Lawson when we had a discussion about ahimsa and the nuance within. And for me, under the tutelage of Reverend Lawson, members of, or key figures rather, in the civil rights movement were galvanized by Mahatma Gandhi's teachings on nonviolence. And they used nonviolence as a battle tactic. So it was proof that being nonviolent was a decisive action in power and strength by showing inaction. And I look and speak to that in my everyday life, especially when my mother says, kill them with kindness. It's that presenting everyone with that compassion and kindness, even in the face of wrong, standing in your truth, standing in that power and letting that speak for itself. So thank you.
Dr. Reverend Lawson. And my name is Serenity Tedesco, and tonight is about you. And briefly, I would like to speak about me, if that's all right. I am the daughter of an immigrant. I myself am an immigrant. I moved to the United States at the age of 9 years old. And when I came here, I experienced things that I wasn't prepared for: discrimination, microaggressions, all the things that a little girl may not always be prepared for when moving to the United States. But one thing that I can tell you, though, is that I am here, that I am taking up space, that I am in academia, and that you all are listening to me right now because of the work of Reverend Lawson, because of his work. And with that, I just want to end with some gratitude for allowing your presence to be the bridge that allows my Eastern ethics and my strong belief in equality to come together as one. Thank you.
So come on up, John. Let's have John stand next to Reverend Lawson. Thank you all. And I think you've probably figured it out. These are graduate students within the Master of Arts in Yoga Studies. Wonderful, wonderful group of people.
Where's the check?
The check is in the mail.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's good. Well, this has been quite a fine evening. This moment, at least. And I want to express my profound delight and pleasure in being here. And express my gratitude to Navin and Fatima Doshi for their generosity towards this university and for the university in turn offering me this award in the name of the Doshi family. On this October 2nd, International Day of Nonviolence, also on the 100th. Gandhi was born in 169, am I right? 1869.
That's correct.
October the 2nd. And so you can figure out what date this is, which I didn't take the time to remind myself of his birthday today, October 2nd. So I have the very profound privilege of being able to be here on Gandhi's birthday. I want to then secondly try to say how important Doshi Bridgebuilder Award is in my own thinking, because I have been called bridge builder before. And I do have deep appreciation for Indian history and for Buddhism and Hinduism, and for Islam and all of the world religions. And you may or may not know, I spent 3 years in India, Nagpur, India, which is almost the exact geographical center of India, and spent 3 years at Hislop College and Nagpur University as a coach and phys ed teacher and campus minister. And I was able to deliberately choose to go to India as my second choice because the government threw me in prison when I was about to go to work for 3 years in what is now Zimbabwe, Africa, in a high school. And that could not happen, but the Methodist Board of Missions, which sent young college graduates across the earth to teach English or to work in the fields in which we had some interest in the late 40s and 50s, and I chose to do that. And so I did go to get my second choice in going to India. And I know that I've been shaped by those 3 years in various ways. And we'll always remember, I have at least one friend from India who I've been in touch with in the last 2 or 3 years, who worked with me in Nagpur itself. I thought for this evening, I would try to talk quite briefly, if possible, on the issue of my connections with Gandhi. I count Gandhi as equal, if not in advance, of Albert Schweitzer. Albert Schweitzer produced, of course, as many of you know, the equations of relativity and gravity that enabled much of the technology and the science of the last 100 years. Those were not just ordinary equations, they were equations that opened up many, many, many dimensions of our universe and of human experience and of human reason. It gave us vast knowledge of ourselves and the world, which has to be in many ways our human central purpose. Self-knowledge, knowledge of our human family, knowledge of our universe, and the capacity to live in that universe in such a fashion that we enhance the will of eternity, the equality of eternity, the justice of God, for not just some of us, but all of us, all across our earth. To recognize that our life gift is mysteriously and profoundly unique. Biologists of the last century estimated that perhaps the earth has produced some 50 billion living things, living species. And of those 50 billion, the human species is the one that stands out because it is the only species that has learned to build a house, create languages, and create religions, and create chemistry and biology, and to study itself, to study the earth and the galaxy and the vast world. So our gift of life is totally unique. You can teach certain animals how to dance, but we human beings have learned to dance from the earliest centuries or decades of our existence. And we continue to recognize that dance is important to what it is to be alive and it's to be human. In my family, when I grew up in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, Massillon, Ohio. My family, my dad was a United Methodist pastor and elder. My dad also was the son of former slaves, because my great-grandfather and my grandfather escaped almost as children. My great-grandfather perhaps was 19 or 20. I don't know if he was that old. We have not been able to find that out. But my grandfather and great-grandfather escaped under the Underground Railroad up to Philadelphia. And so that later on by marriage, my family was connected to the conductor of the Underground Railroad in Philadelphia, William Steele. My father had one of the 1898 books by William Steele, in which he lists simply all the folk who came through the Philadelphia Underground Railroad. That's mostly what the book is. It's whole chapter after chapter names, and it's a fairly thick book. And anyway, my life as a young person, as a child, there was a running quarrel in my family between my father and mother over whether or not we children should be allowed to use violence, fight each other, our anger against each other, other people, whether we should be able to and allowed to use the kind of street language often that despised people. They agreed on the fact that we were not in language to abuse one another or anyone else. They disagreed over the use of violence. My mother was of the mind all the time that we boys should not wrestle and quarrel with each other in anger. That we should love one another and resolve our issues, differences in different ways. My dad was of the mind that to learn to fight, even those who want to fight you for some reason, was the way we became stronger as male persons. My mother largely prevailed in that argument. By the time I was 8, in the streets of Massillon, Ohio, accosted with racist epithets on the main street, the Lincoln Way, and Lincoln Boulevard here, but the Lincoln Way off of Main Street also. Accosted by a child like myself, and I, not realizing at all what I was doing, but nevertheless went over and accosted the child physically. And ran home from the errand that my mother had sent me off at after school. And for some odd reason, the only time I ever talked to her was I heard this conversation in the house over a meal. I mentioned this encounter on Lincoln Way. And she asked me very clearly, Jimmy, what good did that do? Then went on to indicate the extent to which our family was a family under God and in God, family loving one another, family loved by the St. James A.M.E. Zion congregation where my father was the pastor, and a family that sought to reflect love for one another and for all others. Then at the end of that encounter, she said to me, Jimmy, there must be a better way. I remember these words, these two, the opening sentence and the last sentence I remember very, very well. They haunted me all of my life. And I have sought, therefore, to turn the other cheek, to go the second mile, to refuse to let myself become so angry that I could not manage my own life. The Bible, it is written, be angry, but do not sin. In the Bible, it's written, be angry, but do not let the sun set on your anger. From that experience, I've been convinced that fear, anger, being terribly upset by the world in which we live, I should say primarily the country in which we live. Upset that we do not have a political party that forthrightly says we are committed to, we hold these truths are self-evident. We are committed that we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect record, we have no political party that has that kind of in-depth commitment and works on it day after day. And this is great tragedy for all of us. Because as a pastor, I know full well that unless you have intellectual and spiritual and moral compasses against which you bounce your behavior and bounce your life, compasses both that are in poetry and scripture, but compasses also that are in human beings like a Gandhi. Do not have those compasses of life. We cannot really do the hard work of conversation, of teaching, of learning, of becoming, of being transformed, of discovering the massive power of the gift of life itself. I am not arrogant about our lives. We human beings have only come a very small way, discovering the power of being alive. So I'm grateful for the many, many good people who felt need to wrestle with the issues of how I want to live and how I want to be and how I want to act and behave. A multitude of that across this year. In 1947, I began to read about Mahatma Gandhi, my first freshman year of college in Ohio, who framed, as far as I know, the term nonviolence. Said it was his translation, rights rather, that nonviolence is his translation of the Jainist term ahimsa. And from Gandhi, from whom I learned that love is not anemic and impotent, but love has power in it. Both Gandhi and Martin King and many others, Jesus of Nazareth, Moses, across human history have insisted that, in fact, love does have a power. And perhaps the great tragedy of the modern world is that so many of us human beings think that we end loving ourselves and loving others when we get into politics or economics and a lot of other spheres. That therefore we are impotent against them, when in fact our very birth, these splendid lines of life, our very birth is an act of power. We would not allow ourselves to move away from that power to get the powers of the earth that very often have misled us all. So in reading Gandhi in 1947, I knew I was a nonviolent practitioner, satyagraha athlete. I increasingly refused to use the term soldier or warrior, because I think those terms reflect the plight of Syria today, the plight of the Middle East, the plight of some places in the United States where violence has disastrously detoured people from being what they could be. So nonviolence is, in my judgment, therefore, a way of life, a way of truth, a way of breathing, inhaling and exhaling, a way of discovering the wonder of one's own gift and the wonder of human beings everywhere. And love is the demand that we allow our breathing and our walking persistently, in spite of whatever frailty we have, to be the walk and the living of compassion and truth. As power, as care for life and enhancing the wonder and beauty of life. Secondly, Gandhi's intervention is equal or far more important than Albert Einstein's intervention. Because while science is critical for as a way to have truth and a way to organize life, Gandhi's intervention calls for us to put down the histories of our past, histories that are destructive. Histories in which we of the human family have gone in the wrong direction, the history in which we have delayed the expansion of our humanity, the expansion of our lives, because we have allowed ourselves to adopt all sorts of policies that contradict the gift of life and therefore contradict love, therefore contradict the capacity of human life to make life fully livable. Discover the vastness of love and compassion for all humankind. So Gandhi called nonviolence a science. We may not like that word, but Gandhi writes that, he says that. He, in fact, says something like this, he writes something like this, that if we follow the science of nonviolence, we will find the results are as accurate and effective as electricity, or as ether, or as nuclear energy. He doesn't write nuclear energy, that's my addition. If we follow the way of nonviolence, of compassion and truth, love, we will discover that we will affect change in the same fashion, because it's the law of life, it's a law of science, it's a law without which we human beings cannot be a species and will destroy ourselves. So I've tried to walk that way all my life, live that way. And it was my great pleasure and my excitement when the Montgomery bus boycott began December 1st, 1955 in Montgomery, Alabama. I was in India at the time, but I was excited. It was one of the most wonderful days that I've ever had. Just the reporting in the front pages of Indian newspapers. Negroes boycott in Montgomery, Alabama. I'm not sure that that's the exact title of the headline in the middle of the front page. But it brought great enthusiasm to my own life. And I knew full well that when I got back to the United States, that I would be involved in that movement. I want to add my first shaking hands with Martin Luther King Jr. That was February the 6th, 1957 in Oberlin, Ohio, on the campus of the Oberlin College, where I went to seek my master's degree. Dr. King had a lecture, standing room only lecture on the campus. Auditorium, the main auditorium of that campus, that seat 1,500 people, and it was standing room only, and people outside. And I was invited to be a part of a handful of people who had lunch with King on that noon. And I walked into the small dining room of the Oberlin building, and no one else had arrived. I heard stirring at the door, and there was Martin King walking inside the room also, and found his way over the campus there. And I turned back, and he and I shook hands for the first time, and then we were able to talk for a time. And I said to King that I'd been had returned from India, and I intend, as soon as I had 1 or 2 graduate degrees, to move south and work. And his words to me were simply, "Come now. We need you now." Because not only had I continued my studies of Gandhi, but I continued studying nonviolence in South Africa, Gandhi, the African National Congress, in Europe, in India itself, in Asia, in the United States, in South America. And that continues to be one of my side studies as a person. So King and I shaking hands and talking. He said, "Come now." I said, "I'll come as fast as I could." I decided in that moment I would have to drop out of school, which I did. The intervention by Gandhi is probably the most important one. Human beings must give up our antagonism towards one another. We must give up economic, social, cultural, racial, gender structures that torture people, that shackle people, so that they cannot really live fully in their own right, which they have the right to live fully, because that's the meaning of our being birthed. I did move south then in January of '58 and was able to help people understand that in the upbringing that most of us have, we can exercise the Gandhian gift of learning to live by love and truth. So Gandhi has been for me now for 70 years or more a mentor, as Jesus of Nazareth has been my mentor, as the pastor, theologian. I deliberately in high school recognized that I was going to go into be ordained one day and would pastor the local church. Not interested in anything else. The grassroots is where we build struggles that can overcome. And I would say to you that the Gandhian philosophy, Gandhian's life and work was 50 years of experimenting with nonviolence, with truthfulness. And it was always where he lived that he worked the hardest at it. I want to say to you this evening that our country desperately needs to have the compass of nonviolent struggle if we're going to be allowed to see this nation fulfill its destiny. The confusion and clashes today in our nation are not because of the political parties. Clashes are not because of the political parties. The political parties are extremely weak on the things that make for life, the things that make for truth, the things that make for justice and hope. They're terrible. The political parties are pretty bad. At the point of easily passing budgets that build bombs, that creates fleets of battleships and aircraft carriers and planes all around the world. But the parties are very, 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 very inept, anemic at planning how you help 330 million people come together in their humanity, work to end illiteracy, work to end racism, work to end sexism, male domination, work to end violence. We have a very violent culture. You see many people who do not go for nonviolence recognize they've been raised and weaned on the violence of our culture and may not even know how violent a culture they take in to the very breath. They may not know the extent to which plantation capitalism has shaped our economy unto the very present moment. It must be dismantled. Our nation is to really find freedom, find the joy of being alive. The clash in the United States today is over the progress we have made in dismantling the old that must be dismantled, and in allowing, therefore, space for a new people, a new nation to emerge. And I'm not here saying we have arrived. We have not. We're a far distance away from having arrived. We may never arrive. The dismantling must continue. But one of the new things I've had to do as a human being here in this country of mine has been to get aware of the fact that in my traveling to universities across the country and colleges and teaching at one or two places, here's something I've had to get used to. When I started visiting college campuses, they were largely all white in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan. They were all male dominated. There were women students, but I don't recall ever meeting a woman dean, a woman president of a college. Ohio has more than 100 or more small colleges, independent colleges, put together by different people. The first college in the United States that would accept Black folk and women was Oberlin College at Oberlin, the first college in the United States to accept, as it organized in 1830-something, as a college, they accepted Negroes and ex-slaves, and they had their doors from day one open to women. One of the reasons I went to Oberlin, and I like Oberlin. Well, they were white, male dominated. You can't travel to those colleges today, even to the state colleges of California. I did a tour here back in the 60s, of about 7 days. Went to a number of the state colleges. They were all white, male dominated. You go to those same places today and see what they look like. See what the atmosphere is. Oberlin College tried from the beginning to create such a climate of inclusion. That's one of the places where the walls have come tumbling down, helped by Civil Rights Bill of 1964, which said discrimination in hiring people by race or gender or birth or by national origin or by religion. It's unconstitutional. That law is a more important law than the voting rights bill. You go, you see, therefore, I recognize as I travel these days that the nation has radically changed. If I had a hotel reservation in the 50s for some meeting in Washington, D.C., where this actually happened, I did not know when I walked into a hotel whether the hotel would say, yes, your name is here, Mr. Lawson, James Lawson. I would be turned away, even though I had the certification that I had a reservation. I could not know when I went to eat in a restaurant in Ohio or in New York, even in the 60s, that I would not be refused service, which happened any number of times. So that a person like myself, able to travel in the United States, always recognized that you might be turned away at the door, even though you had every human right to be at that door. Walk in and be served and treated with dignity. That has now changed. I have not been refused a reservation or a meeting place, restaurant, probably in the last 30 years, 40 years. That's the consequence of the King Rosa Parks movement, which the late Congressman John Lewis called the nonviolent movement in America. So I'm going to close by trying to say to you that I hope you will get some different language. The language of the media that calls for the civil rights movement is a mistake. Civil rights is the omnibus umbrella term that the Congress of 1866 gave to this struggle. They passed and used the language for the first time that I know of civil rights by passing the 1866 Civil Rights Act. That's where the term comes from. We must see, however, that within that act, there are massive human stories that must be told and remembered. The Little Rock Nine, who I had the great privilege of meeting in early January of 1958 in Little Rock, Arkansas, all 9 of them. That story is usually reported as the Little Rock Nine story. It is a part of the civil rights struggle of the United States of America, but it must not be called civil rights. It ought to be called what it was then, in order for people to recognize the meaning of that story from ordinary people in helping to reshape the destiny of Little Rock, Arkansas, and of education in the United States. The Jackie Robinson story. Yes, it's a part of civil rights, but the Jackie Robinson story is far more than that. It is a piece of the history that inspired me and has helped me to have my eyes open as to how our movement in the southeastern part of the country emerged. It's Jackie Robinson, 1947, when he went to Sanford, Florida, where Trayvon Martin was executed 8-9 years ago. Black people were excited. It's a small ball field, a small stadium in Sanford where the Dodgers did their spring training. But Black people came from hundreds of miles around Sanford to sit on the grass outside the ballpark because they could not go in. To stand because of no fences and concrete blocks or brick, but open fences, wire fences that you could see through. And wherever Jackie Robinson played that first year, 47, 48, Black folk in all the places where major baseball was flocked to the stadiums, not because they were baseball fans, but because they wanted to see Jackie Robinson desegregating Major League Baseball. That's the spirit that enabled the Montgomery bus boycott to emerge and the nonviolent movement to emerge. It showed me the extent to which there were millions of Americans who wanted leadership for changing ourselves and our nation towards the great, 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 great visions that we people, we human beings, can learn to live in equality, liberty, and justice in the beloved community, wherever that is. No more significant role than Gandhi's intervention. Every university and high school ought to be teaching about that intervention like it teaches about the intervention of Albert Einstein. The LMU is not doing that across its course offerings. Some of you gathered in this place should see to it that LMU sees the intervention of Gandhi as a part of the critical history for the West, for the world alike. We have a chance of making the earth, yes, indeed, a paradise where every boy and every girl will have the chance to journey into the journey of life and love and truth and hope. Gandhi would say, as Martin King has said, written, if they are going to be allowed to make that journey, far more of us need to give up any kind of support of violence, of despising human beings, of making heroes of those who master great wealth and do not use it well. The earth needs more than ever before men and women who will adopt the nonviolent philosophy, way of life, and methods of life, and use them in home, in church, in unions, everywhere we can. The major religions of the world must abandon any support they have for war and violence. The religions of the earth, especially Christianity, must give up their adoration of the idol gods of the dollar bill money. The religions of the world must decide that the despising of any single set of human beings for whatever excuses must be dismantled. The human race is going to have a journey towards the massiveness of life as gift and as power. The religions of the world need to become the agencies that help the entirety of the human family in the ethos of life, not of death, of compassion, not of despising, of freedom, not tyranny, of hope, not despair, of seizing hold of this time to allow nonviolence, soul force, truth force to become the way in which we achieve purpose and capacity. Again, my thanks to LMU and to the Doshi family for this foundation, and to you for being here. I accept gratefully this award.
I'm so pleased and honored to introduce a colleague from California State University, Fresno, a professor of philosophy and of religion, an expert on Mahatma Gandhi, written extensively and is currently involved with many projects bringing forth the wisdom of James Lawson. Welcome, please, Professor Dina Howard.
Wow. What do you say after this? Nothing. Take it in. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to be part of this wonderful and meaningful event of honoring Reverend James Lawson on the day of Gandhi's birthday, on the day of nonviolence, and the yoga day at LMU. So I'm really thankful to all the organizer, my friend, Dr. Chappell, and a lot of work went into it. So thank you.
I knew when Dr. Chappell asked me to give a little response that I will not give a response. So I'm sorry I lied. I knew that who can respond to Reverend James Lawson? I know him too well. What I can do is show my reverence for Reverend James Lawson. And I can show my reverence for the Doshis who have done so much good, and reverence for those who have led the path of justice, love, equality. Because of that, like Serenity said, I stand here because of all of you. It would not have been possible otherwise. So I want to tell you a little story how I found Reverend Lawson, because you are so lucky you don't know how lucky you are to have him here. So I had been studying Gandhi's philosophy for many years, and during my study, I came across a documentary called A Force More Powerful. If you have not watched it, I highly recommend it, my dear student back there. And in that documentary, one of the episodes shows Reverend James Lawson's actual footing and also his work in Nashville and the workshops he held to teach people, teach students how to do the sit-in movement. I was so inspired by Reverend James Lawson's strategy and his innovative methods that I wanted to meet him. Where do I find him? He does not do Facebook. He does not have an email. He does not have an agent, believe it or not. He answers his own phone calls. No Twitter account, no Instagram. Go get him. No way. It was so hard. But you know what? They say dream big, you get it. And I found him. And here he is. And I have had the opportunity to spend many, many hours with him at various events and hear him speak at various events. So what I am going to do for 2 or 3 minutes, just to pull out the nuggets of Reverend James Lawson's speech, and maybe we have a couple of minutes for question and answers or discussion. We'll ask Dr. Chappell. I had a conversation with Reverend James Lawson yesterday. I called him and said, I'll see you tomorrow. And he gave me 32 minutes long history of the civil rights movement. And one thing I want to share with you, that he used the word bridge builder, and we're talking about bridge building award, that how he sees this movement and his role as a bridge from Gandhian struggle and his tactics to the civil rights, not the civil rights, non-violent struggle of the United States against racism, all segregation. So I call him so timely and so powerful that I see him as a bridge builder in the true sense. And the words he used today that can be very helpful for all of us. His mother's wisdom, there must be a better way. There must be a better way. And today's world, we need that there must be a better way, as we are so anxious about so many injustices, continued injustices. We always should think about what Reverend James Lawson's mother said, there must be a better way. And he lived throughout his life, there must be a better way. Second thing he said, love is not anemic. And many students of mine say that, oh, Dr. Howard, love doesn't work sometimes. You have to really use violence. But I never heard the term, love is not anemic, and it has a lot of power. Satyagraha as athletic program instead of battle. Love that. Because it really requires rigor and building in order to fight injustices. And Gandhi's intervention in the recent past is greater than Albert Einstein's. How many can say that? And he has not just, he clearly thought about that how Gandhian intervention is greater today than, and we need to really reflect on that point. And then nonviolence is a law of life. Love is a law of life. And King's prophetic call to Reverend Lawson, come now, we need you. And I'm so glad that he went. I'm so glad he couldn't help. I mean, I know he just was waiting for the right time. But that coming, that answering that call, that we are here with him today and in the world that we are sharing today. His call to the United States, a citizen of the United States, the government of the United States, to build a just, equal society has to be paid attention to. And he's been teaching this through workshops, even at the age of 93. If you guys want to, some of you who don't know, he teaches every third Saturday a month. Now, lucky us, we have Zoom, so we all can tune in. And he teaches, and he also answers questions and how to address the current issues. So that's a great opportunity to keep learning from this great leader, great teacher. I call him my mentor, teacher, and American Gandhi. So thank you, Reverend James Lawson, and thanks to all of you. And maybe we have a couple of minutes for a question or no?
I want to thank Pratima, Veena, Reverend Lawson for the beautiful words that were shared. And as we will be ending with a song, we'll be also perhaps hungry, and I invite you all to stay for dinner. And what Naveen will do is explain the inspiration behind the song that Professor Harris, Dr. Kim Harris, will lead us in singing a little bit together.
Stay here.
Okay.
I just want to give the background for this poem that I wrote, Unity. Most of us know about Hindu tradition that we are one. Unity, soul is one, Atman is one. The body is a garment of the soul. So when we think of unity, we are one. Then the first few lines of the poem, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Buddhist, that is based upon Richard Attenborough's movie, Gandhi. How many you remember the movie, Gandhi? When he is in his car studying, and there are some nationalists, Hindu nationalists who come. That's when he says, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Muslim, I'm Christian, and all of that. So that's the first paragraph. In matters of Om Shanti Shanti, I found all of that. I had to compress to determine what are the chanting words of different traditions. Then I also asked about what is Jewish tradition chant. You couldn't find one. Sorry about that. And the item about me, we. I don't know if you recall. I have 2 or 3, maybe more, shall I say, role models of people I admire, along with Reverend Lawson and Martin Luther King, of course. Muhammad Ali. So Muhammad Ali was invited at Harvard for some invocation. And then after he speaks, then someone shouts, a poem, a poem. if you all recall, Muhammad Ali was very good at giving an instant poem. So he comes close to the mouth and he says, me, we, and then it goes away. So then we add a couple of words to that. So that's how the poetry came along. I'm sure there are quite a few things I could probably say about where it is, which one came from there, etc. But I think that should be something.
Beautiful. Okay.
Thank you. As I prepare to sing this, I know I would like to acknowledge the people that have been making sure that you could hear us and see us and that we could be out on Zoom. So thank you all very much. So this poem it's chanted. So there are some places, however, where I'm going to repeat a line a few times, and I'll invite you to sing it with me because, from the tradition I come from, there's got to be some audience participation. I am a brown person in America. I am who knows could be black or white. I am all the colors of the rainbow. I am the body, mind, and soul. I am the blind man from Hindustan, but I can see the whole elephant. I am the knower and the known. I am the bee and the honeycomb. I am a Hindu. I am a Buddhist. I am Jain and a Jew and also a Christian. I am a Muslim. I am a Sikh. I am the sun and the moon, the silence and the music, the silence and the music again, the silence and the music one more time, the silence and the music. Me, we, in the same moment now, love is everywhere. Oh, can't you feel it? I am all who have been or will be. I want to be, oh yes, I want to be like one element, one humanity, a bright photon, discarding all that divides us, searching for the one, searching for the many. I am a Hindu. I am a Buddhist. I am Jain and Jew and also Christian. I am Muslim. I am Sikh. I am the sun and the moon, the silence and the music. Here we go. The silence and the music again. The silence and the music, one more time, the silence and the music. Many paths lead to the one, each real and unique, like a many-faceted diamond, brilliant, interconnected, twinkling. I am the air floating through the clouds. I am one, the desire to be all. I am you, me and us and all, because there is only one. All is the same reality. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Arihanta Namakaros Nam Yoho Ringe Kyo Nam Yoho Ringe Kyo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Lu Akbar Akamuratsanam. Me, we are so supreme. Me, we are so supreme. Again, me, we are so supreme. One more time. We are so supreme. Om, Amen, Amen. Om, Amen, Amen. Om, Amen, Amen. Om, Amen, Amen. I am a Hindu. I am a Buddhist. I am Jain and Jew and also Christian. I am Muslim. I am Sikh. I am the sun. I am the moon. The silence and the music. 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 I dance in time like the ocean tides. I travel in the boundless space where colors never fade. There is warming sun and cooling shade. Where it's all the same, where it's all the same. I walk in the greenest of jungles. I swim in deep blue oceans. I fly in the skies filled with the spectrum of blue. And I realize I am you, me, and the soul. I am a Hindu. I am a Buddhist. I am Jain and Jew and also Christian. I am Muslim. I am a Sikh. I am the sun and the moon. The silence and the music. 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 Om Shanti 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 Arhanta Namo Kare Nam Yo Ringe Kyo Nam Yo Ringe Kyo. Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Akamura Sanam. And we say, we are so supreme. We are so supreme. We are so supreme. We are so supreme. Om, Amen, Amen. Om, Amen, Amen. Om, Amen, Amen. Om, Om.
So many people to thank. Reverend Lawson for guiding us. Bob and Helen for inspiring us. My wife for putting up with me. Our daughter who is on the Zoom, she's one of those numbers I trust or will be soon, and she's a graduate of Oberlin College. And I want to thank the Doshi family. And we have Kevin and Sonia and Kailash here. 3 generations, all in the same room here. Navin and Pratima, who you've seen. I apologize to Robin for not coming up with a good Jewish phrase, you know. I lived in New York for so long. What was I thinking? But I do want to thank Robin, because Robin has been such a stalwart presence for our college, and not the first woman dean, the longest serving woman dean, and we're very grateful for her presence. I want to thank all of the graduate students. You got to meet 3 of them, volunteers throughout the day, graduate students, some undergraduates also in the audience. And I feel that this is literally like our living room, and that I just saw that Nirmal and Tara are here from Cal Poly Pomona. So we're spread out through the Cal State and the LMU landscape. Phil Goldberg, wonderful author. Just so many dear friends. And again, thanks so much to the students, to Amy Osborne, and for all of the names that remain unspoken. I want also, as we go and enjoy a meal together, for us to appreciate the farm workers, appreciate the people that prepare the food, and to appreciate our ability to be outside, feeling safe with one another, doing what we're able to do, which is to welcome ourselves to the banquet table. So